Happy Wednesday night, everyone. Welcome to Deep in the Plus. I'm your host, Rob Whiteside, and as always, thank you for being with us tonight. We got a fun show for you, so we appreciate you being here. Please make sure to follow or subscribe to WDWNT TV on YouTube, and also give us a thumbs up as it helps people to find us. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Flight of the Navigator with these folks. It's Desi.
Hey.
And Mr. Rondiana. I think you're muted, buddy.
Muted.
I'm muted, and you're on another window playing as well, so I'm trying to figure out how to mute you.
You can't stop this, man. You cannot stop this. I assume that you're probably watching the show because you're a big fan of the show and you're also on it, so I can't blame you for that. Tonight we're talking about Flight of the Navigator, and it is odd timing because, as we all know, Paul Reubens had passed away this week at the age of 70 from an ongoing battle with cancer. Our thoughts and prayers with his family at this time. That was not the reason that we picked this. We actually picked this movie a while ago, and so very sad news. He was a big voice for us in the Disney community because he was the voice of Captain Rex on Star Tours and in Oga's Cantina. He was also the voice. He was a voice on the Backlot Tour, and he also was obviously the voice of Max in Flight of the Navigator. So just kind of rough timing for that one. We did not do that on purpose, but it will be sort of a good homage to the man for us to be able to talk about this movie tonight. Honestly, the reason that we talked about this movie, I see you smiling already. The reason we talked about this movie is that Desi has been hounding me to do this movie. She hounded me, as anybody who watches this show for a while knows. We go deep into the Disney Plus catalog and pull out Disney movies and talk about them, Disney movies and TV shows, and she wanted to talk about Brink. That went how it went. That went how it went. However, she's been saying, let's get Flight of the Navigator, which is a cult classic, and we wanted to get that on here. I honestly put it off for a while, but finally we said we would do it, and then Desi's like, oh, I've never seen it. I should watch it. Desi, explain yourself, ma'am.
I guess it was my husband's favorite movie growing up, and so literally every time I told him I was going to be on Deep in the Plus, and I've been on 30-something episodes now, he has said, is it Flight of the Navigator? And when I tell him no, he's like, well, when are you doing Flight of the Navigator? So that's why I just kept asking, because he said, get Ron to do Flight of the Navigator. Get Ron to do...
Ron.
Sorry.
That's me. That's Ron.
Well, I got
Hey,
you
I'm
both.
here too.
I got you both to do Flight of the Navigator. So
Yep.
Here we are. He
And-
hounded
and
me, so I hounded you.
And honestly, I thought it was going to be a you and me thing. And as soon as we put Flight of the Navigator, knock, 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 here comes Ron Deanna, like, hello, you're not doing this without me. Ron, you have a history with this movie as well as like loving it from a kid, right?
Yeah, it was one of my favorite movies as a kid, but it was also filmed about 3 doors down from my house. One of the opening shots when they're approaching, when they're driving up to his house, back in '78, you can see, we're showing it now. You can see my dock is kind of a white one in the background on the right there. I always think it's fun. The shot's funny because they're kind of coming not from a dead end, but from the wrong end of a peninsula. So there's no way to actually enter from where they're coming from. Just one of those funny things I thought. But I watched it being filmed, a couple scenes that they did in front of that house, and I actually ruined a take because I was standing outside with my dad watching them film it, and then my mom drives by behind us as we're going to go, oh, there she is! And they were in the middle of him running off from in front of the house, and ruined a take there. So, I watched it being filmed, saw it in theaters as a kid, and it was one of my absolute favorites. Yeah, this is the scene. Right when he pops over there was what they were filming.
That's so cool.
So you have a storied history with this movie, and that's awesome. So you weren't in it, but however, you were around it when it was being made. When it came out, I assume it was a big deal in the town. Everybody went and watched it?
Yeah, I mean, Fort Lauderdale is not exactly a small town, but, we usually got overshadowed either by spring break movies or, Porky's was probably the most famous Fort Lauderdale movie before that. Probably still
Up
is,
next on
honestly.
Deep in the Plus,
But
Porky's.
So yeah, it was definitely something that was being talked about, and I remember just my street being closed off and going out at night to watch them film in front of the house. Yeah, there's a lot of childhood memories for that.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah, so we have some people with ties to this thing, it seems like, and it's kind of cool that we get to talk about it tonight. This one actually on Disney Plus is an actual Disney movie. A lot of the ones that we go back into are 20th Century Fox or something like that, but this was a Disney movie. But I love the lineup of suggested movies they put next to it: The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes, Tron, Rocketeer, Star Wars, and The Black Hole. All movies that I love. I do think it's funny that these are all sci-fi movies, and that's what this is. It's a sci-fi experience, but this is like the shortest of all of them. It's only an hour and 29 minutes, which is kind of crazy because when I first saw that, I was like, wait a minute, I'm trying to remind myself, was this a TV thing? No, it was a theater release, but I guess because it was a family movie and Disney like targeted families, and I guess kids have always had short attention spans, it's only 90 minutes. Ron?
That's yeah. I mean, I think about that. That's what kids' movies used to be. Like 90 was the goal. Like maybe an hour and 40. Like the new Ninja Turtles is only like I think just over 90 minutes. Which I'm kind of glad after Oppenheimer or Barbenheimer double feature stuff. Like I don't want to sit in the theater that long anymore. I think my kids' attention span's kind of in this range as opposed to closer to 2 hours that we get even out of some of the modern Disney animateds.
Yeah. So one of the things that I thought was interesting about this too is it opened up on August 1st, 1986. Like again, we did not plan that.
Oh,
We did not plan it
we
being
didn't.
Yeah.
that close in time. So, but one of the things also that I was like, okay, so it's 37 years old. Wonder what else is 37 years old. The Olsen twins just turned 37 years old. Amber Heard, 37 years old.
Oh my God, is she
So
really?
yeah, Leah Michelle, this is her birth year. Drake Bell was also born in 1986. Lindsay Lohan. Um, Jenna Marbles, YouTube star Jenna Marbles. Robert Pattinson, the real Batman.
Lady
Drake.
Gaga's only 37?
I thought she
Yeah.
was older than that. Yeah.
I
Nope.
thought she was older than that
Um,
too.
so if you want to know how old
But
this movie is Lady Gaga old.
also given when it came out, I also think. Do you think when he was recording his lines for this, do you think Paul Rubens was just doing DJ Rex at the same time, or not DJ Rex, Captain Rex,
Oh.
because it would have
Captain
been
X
right
could have
about
been.
the same time?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Could
And
have been.
why does he have a pseudonym in this?
Okay, all right. So here's the funny thing about that is that Paul Rubens was listed as Paul Mall in this one, which in the original credits, and so I looked around the internet for that, and one of the people was like, oh, because he was arrested and he was trying to keep himself on the down low, but he was arrested in 1991 for
Yeah, that was way
indecency,
after this.
not 1986. So the internet response, and I haven't had a chance to verify this with anybody, but the internet response was he wanted it to be a surprise for his fans because as Max is the voice in the first part of the movie, he is, or once he's in there, he is very nondescript, very official. I don't think I ever would have picked out Paul Rubens in a million years. And then as David's trying to get him to be more human, and then he starts to laugh, and you hear the Pee Wee laugh, you're like, oh, there's no way that would be anybody other than Pee Wee Herman slash Paul
Yeah.
Rubens. But I think that was the reasoning, and I would say that would make sense that he would want to surprise his fans because he had a very distinctive voice of that time, and to be able to be in a family movie and people not be able to pick him out until the last minute. And then he eventually goes haywire from absorbing too much information from David, and then sounds basically from like midway through his play to the end, he sounds like Pee Wee Herman the rest of the time.
Yeah.
So that's the understanding I have, unless you guys have other information.
No,
I
actually, my
just never
husband
like.
didn't believe me.
Didn't believe you
Oh,
what?
when I told him that Paul Rubens was in this movie, he's like, "No, I don't think he is." And then so we were watching it, and he like when it got to the part where he laughs, he's like, "Oh yeah, that is him. That does sound like his voice when he does that Pee Wee Herman laugh." But then at the end credits, when it said Paul Mall, he's like, "Oh, see, I told you it wasn't Paul Rubin." So then we had to look it up. No, it is Paul Rubin, but for some reason he decided to go by Paul Mall in this movie.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Ron?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I had remembered, at the time saying it was him, and then the credits. I thought, oh, maybe it was just him doing the laugh, and it wasn't him doing the whole thing. But like, it just seemed always weird, and especially like, isn't Paul Mall a cigarette brand or an old cigarette brand?
Is it?
Like, it's an interesting like pseudonym to take.
Yeah, it was. It was a cigarette brand. I mean, I say that not as if I used to smoke, but I remember seeing that. As a matter of fact, when he stops, and we'll talk about like little pieces of this, when he stops at the gas station to ask for directions, which is hilarious, there's actually a Coke machine and a cigarette machine right next to it. And so I was like, oh, interesting. It's not something most people would know existed, was a machine to buy
Yeah,
cigarettes, because it was so,
I
they
didn't
were
even know
so
that's what it was.
yeah, they were so easy to get at the time before they decided that people under the age of 16 shouldn't smoke or that it was bad for you. So, um, yeah, so the movie takes place in 1978, and I got to tell you something, Ron, and you're not going to be happy with me about this. I hadn't seen it before this either.
No
I
way.
I told you that though. I told you that. I was just shocked that you were the one who
yeah,
was like, "We have to watch this. We have to watch this. Have you seen it?" No. So I had never seen it before because we actually own a copy of it, and my kids watched it, and I didn't watch it. So I was excited to have the chance to watch it finally. There were a lot of things that have referenced it in the past, so I was glad to see this one. But because I had never watched it, it starts out in 1978, and I'm like, okay, I know this is supposed to be 1986. Why? Like already there's a little
I didn't
tell, and I'm
know
like,
that.
that it
I
started out in
I
1978 or
thought
what?
I legit because I had never seen the movie before. I legitimately thought, oh, this came out in 1978. It must have
Oh,
been that my husband's older brother, who's like 8 years older than him, must have really liked the movie and then got him into it. That's what I thought at the beginning of the movie. I did not know that there was any time travel going on.
Geek Filter in chat says people knew it was bad in 1986. You mean smoking? Yes, they did know it was bad. But again, there used to be a machine, and so instead now
we
you have to
had
go behind the
a
counter and show ID.
we had a cigarette machine at
Yeah.
one of our restaurants, almost to 2000. I mean, sometime in the 90s, they made it so the
Wow.
bartender had to like use a clicker to unlock it. Like, you'd go buy them from the bar, you'd pay the bartender, they'd click it, then you can go pick in a pack.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Weird
Well,
tangent,
and
but yeah.
no, it certainly is. This is, I think, the best shot that I can get of it is this. You can see on this. It looks like a candy machine here. So these machines right here,
That's
the
what I
Coke
thought it
machines.
was.
Yeah, the Coke machine is right next to it.
I really thought it was a candy machine, and I thought that's how he got his chocolate bar after he leaves the gas station.
Yeah. So and I guess it's not really a gas station. It's like a roadside gator place, but we can talk about that later. So anyway, when I'm watching this movie and I see 1978 at the beginning, I'm like, okay, what am I missing here? Because I know that it was filmed in 1986, and then so then we run into that time travel situation, which I kind of saw coming. But then when he goes into the woods to find his brother, and then he loses him, and then he falls into the pit, and then he comes out and he's somewhere else, and he goes back to his house, and as soon as the woman opened the door, I was like, that's exactly what happened. Like, I mean, like there was no question. But Desi, this was your first time watching it too.
I
Like,
thought it was
what were your thoughts?
aliens.
What?
I thought it was aliens. I did not know that it was time travel until I saw his dad with the gray hair. And then that or maybe when, the police started going like, oh, this kid was presumed dead 8 years ago. That's probably when it started to dawn on me. I did not, I legitimately thought it was aliens. Maybe I watched too much History Channel, but I did not realize that it was a time travel movie at all until probably too late. I should have seen it coming before then.
Well, there was a another space movie that came out in 1984, 2 years before this, called The Last Starfighter,
Well,
and the idea of The Last Starfighter was that Ron's like, "Yay!"
Oh, I
The la-
love The Last Starfighter.
was this whole
Oh, well,
idea about video. Go ahead. What?
when you said a movie that came out before this, I thought you were going to mention Back to the Future. Apparently, time travel was really big in the 80s.
Well, you know what? This movie reminded me of a lot of movies. The way that it opened up reminded me of a lot of The Cat from Outer Space. It had that kind of Disney vibe to it. And then
I
after
love the
that,
two alien ship fake outs in the opening scene too.
Yeah,
Great.
there are
so
three.
many.
There are three fake outs, and I wasn't sure what to call it. I called it a false positive. My daughter called it a fake out, and my wife called it a misdirect. But there were three of them that happened with the spaceship during that. Obviously, the first one
The
was
frisbee, the
the
blimp.
frisbee and the water tower.
Well, okay, that wasn't the opening scene, but yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah, so we're like, oh, this is a we're like, oh, this is a spaceship, and then it was really a frisbee, and the frisbee and the dog thing goes on a little too long for my taste. By the way,
It's
my
just a
wife's
credit,
like,
like the way credits used to be.
she's like, why don't you fast forward? And I'm like, oh, there could be something important here. Nope. So yeah, a lot of stuff with the dogs, but so here's the reveal when it's like, oh, here it comes. Oh, there we go, and it's just happens to be the shiny silver one, like the one we see with the spaceship. So kind, but that there were those, and then the blimp one was very strange because everybody just froze in place, and I thought, okay, this is some kind of a time shift takeover situation with the aliens, and then it's like, nope, it's just a blimp.
I know
You know, I'm
everybody
I'm
looks
already,
Yeah,
up like,
this
oh
one's
my
yeah.
kind of weird.
gosh.
Yeah, I'm already hearing the Close Encounters like theme in my head as they like we see their expressions, right? Like it definitely felt like that. But then again, like I said, we're all looking for it, right? We know that this is a spaceship in this movie, and we're all looking for it, going like, when are we gonna see it? When are we gonna see it? And then this is the last one. It was like, it's a water tower. Oh man, you got us
Yeah.
again. Rules of three, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, that was a very interesting play in this whole thing. So, so the whole thing is basically this little boy David, and he, like I said, he falls down in this pit. He comes back up. It's 8 years later. We don't know what's happening. He doesn't know what's happening. They find a spaceship. Let's talk about the spaceship for a second because we don't really know the connection at first, just like they don't really know the connection at first. But David has appeared again, and then also there's this spaceship that NASA has been informed of that's like in the middle of nowhere. This is a very iconic ship that they find here. Ron, any thoughts about this
It's
ship in general? Tell me you have a toy of this ship?
I've never seen one, but it's a really good mix of a lot of like the old school, like Project Blue Book era, like old school, like UFO like shots that were around in like 60s, 70s, 80s. It looks like they kind of combine those into like what they would make their ship look like the little kind of cloud bumps to it, also being a saucer, and then at some points, looked like a jet. So they kind of make the whole bunch of it into one thing.
Okay.
So,
And then
uh,
go ahead, Desi.
one of our Wigs members, I think it was Brandy, said that her husband went to a Comic Con and met Paul Reubens, and everybody else had um, a Pee Wee Herman doll, but he brought this spaceship with him to get signed, and Paul Reubens didn't know what it was, so that's kind of sad. It's kind of like when what's what's the guy
Eric Idle and
from?
Figment.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, it is. It is kind of like that. So, I mean, you know what? These actors do a lot of things, and he just did the voice. He may not have even ever seen the ship or watched the movie. Who knows? But this very iconic ship, the one thing, even though I hadn't seen this movie, that I did experience over and over again was the backlot tour at Disney's Hollywood Studios slash MGM, and this ship sat on the backlot, just withering away in the Florida
Oh, it's so sad.
conditions. But yeah,
They never
it was.
painted anything. Like,
Uh,
they just let things rot there sometimes.
like Spectra Magic. But
Oh,
anyway, but Ron, you were talking about this one as well.
Yeah, supposedly, and I think D23 might have confirmed it. This is one of two ships. There were two full scale ships made, and this is supposedly one that was converted into this. I don't know if this was the one from the backlot tour after it closed or what, but
it looks like the
supposedly
same shape.
Yeah, D23 said it was us, and then we've said it on the site as well. So
Well, they definitely look like to be a very similar shape. It's just sad looking at those other ones. Like I'm sure somebody knows. I don't know where all of those things exist. I was always more sad that these things were happening with the snow speeder and the skiff
Oh,
sitting out there. But I don't know. That was always a neat part for me to be able to see the boneyard at the backlot tour. But that was always on there. The flight of the Navigator ship. So the ship crashes, and we get to have some interaction with Howard Hessman. Am I the only one that sees Howard Hessman and sees Dr. Johnny Fever? Am I that old? No one else sees
no
that. No
clue
one
who
else
you're
gets
talking
that.
uh,
about.
who's
Head of the
Johnny?
class,
Is
maybe.
Ice? Is it that? Yeah, that's. I don't remember his name in there, but I always think head of the class.
Yeah, head of the class. So Howard Hessman was a DJ on a radio TV show, and also I am in radio, so I've watched it a lot, called WKRP in Cincinnati, and he was Dr. Johnny Fever. And so he was, and that character is like wild hair and beard and the whole bit, whereas Howard Hessman was the NASA leader, and he was very different. Like it was the only time I'd seen like a clean cut Howard Hessman ever. So
Because
I
even
don't
as
know,
a
like
teacher, he's not authoritarian in the show. He's very kind of laid back. Like it's definitely a different role for him.
yeah. But so the rest of the cast, we got Sarah Jessica Parker as Carolyn McAdams, and and then Howard Hessman and Paul Reubens, and that's kind of it for star power here. Everybody else is like Joey Kramer, who played David Freeman. Didn't really go on to do much except for rob a bank.
What?
Are you
Yeah.
guys not familiar with that?
No.
No, he was in that. There was a rash of child stars doing stuff like that in the '90s.
Yeah, but I mean, he really
I
hasn't
felt
been
like
in much other than this movie. Go ahead.
I felt like when his little brother became his older brother, the older version of the brother looked familiar, but I can't think of anything I would have seen him in. He just looked familiar to me. If you guys happen to know.
She did
If
the little
not,
brother
maybe I'm
do a
just going
couple
crazy.
movies too.
The little brother Matt Adler was Jeff at 16 years old, and he was in. He's the current TV show, The Morning Show. He did Shane at Card Services. So I don't think he's doing anything huge. He was additional voices in Ice Age: Dawn of the Dinosaurs. Are these the big moments you
Wow.
guys are looking for?
Nope.
No, I thought that the little brother looked like somebody in another like kid movie at the time, but I think that was generic nerdy kid in glasses. Oh, that's
Albie
who she
Whitaker.
was. That's the mom's
Who-
got a famous role.
Yes, she does. Yeah, and that was the one that the Veronica Cartwright, my wife was like, "Oh, she's the one from," and I forget what she said it was from.
Well,
Do you have
Alien.
that? Oh, in Alien.
She's an
Witches
Ember
of
in
East
Alien. Yeah.
Witches of Eastwick. She was in Witches of Eastwick. She was, I think, the preacher's wife or something like that. So I think that was the one that she associated her with. But yeah, again, not a huge cast, but also not a huge budget. This movie was, I think, a if I'm not mistaken here, it was $9 million to make this movie. I don't know that anybody could
Wow.
make a movie for $9 million anymore. Ron, is that a possibility? I don't know.
Not a big one. I mean, there was a. I won't even call it a movie. Like something released earlier this year called. It was a horror movie called Skinamarink. Was $15,000. So you
Skimmering.
could still make a movie. I barely call it a movie. One of the worst things I've ever seen. I give them props for trying to do something original, but it's a very bad horror movie.
Yeah. I got to shout out a super chat. We have a super chat from Generals and Napoleon, $5. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. In this episode, we've had a Last Starfighter and a WKRP reference in the first 20 minutes. Hashtag classics. See, there's somebody that gets it. Right there. That's somebody that gets it. Thank you so much, Generals and Napoleon. We appreciate you for the super chat. Thanks so much. Yeah, you know what? We try to tie it all together here. There was a lot of things this reminded me of, though, kind of backing away from the cast again for a second. You know, I said Cat from Outer Space. It reminds me a little bit of E.T. a little bit.
Well, there's direct ET references.
Yeah, there are. When the guy's like, what did he want to do? He wanted to phone home. Okay, yeah. And then there were some references in there too that made me think of Anakin and Padme because of the age difference between Carolyn and David. And I was like, you know, do I ship them? They're way different in age, and I'm like, they're closer in age than Anakin and Padme were. Oh. Closer? She was like 19 and he was 12, right?
I didn't get any kind of vibes like that. Yeah,
that's fine. That's fine. Even the ship, though, at some points looked like Queen Amidala's like reflective ship.
Yeah, I guess I could kind of see that. But I thought when they introduced her that she was going to be the 8 years old version of the girl he had a crush on. Like, why did we go into so much depth into, David's in love with this girl, and then he's looking at her through the telescope, and then his dad comes in and looks at her and has this whole conversation about how to talk to girls. I thought that was going to tie it all together. But nope, it was just some random older woman who's hitting on a 12-year-old boy.
Yeah, I thought that too, though, is that Jenny, I think was her name, and that he's looking at her through the telescope, and Dad seems to be on par with like, oh, that's just boys or whatever. It was creepy, but he's looking out at her in the boat, and that's what I thought too, is when I'm putting together the time travel thing, I'm thinking that could be Sarah Jessica Parker's character later on, is the Jenny thing. It's very similar to the blip, right? Where like he even mentions like all of my friends are 20 now, and I'm still 12, and feels out of place around all of these people, and not sure how to adjust to it or deal with it. So. I definitely think there was some.
That would have been better writing, honestly.
What would have been better writing? Oh, if that had been Jenny instead.
Yeah.
No, you're right. But that was the first thing I thought. And Desi, you're saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe I just didn't get that vibe because I watched it when I was a kid, and I got that kind of big sister or maternal kind of relationship when I saw it originally. I think that just kind of carried over to now.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, Ron, because I'm going to go to you on all important things when it comes to this movie. Why did they never let him change his shirt? I mean, they gave him toys. They gave him everything, except they didn't give him a new shirt. Not even like a cool like Star Wars T-shirt or something? Nothing?
Well, I think that was pretty much almost every shirt my parents had me in about 1986, so... It just really seemed that way. Like, I don't know, like, obviously, like, his parents seem to have kept all his stuff. They must have kept his clothes, and there's definitely days pass before he gets, like, a day or two passes before he gets shipped off to NASA, so, yeah. But it does remind me of every shirt my parents had me in.
Well, then, on this box, and on this graphic down here that I pulled, he's wearing a red shirt.
Yeah.
He literally only wears. He's Peter Griffin in this. He's only wearing the same outfit the entire movie from the time that and maybe that's why. Maybe he never changes the shirt so that when he falls into the ditch in the end, it seems like it's exactly the same. Maybe they were like, continuity-wise, we're not going to do it. But in reality-wise, he spent 48 hours, at least that we know of, in captivity with the people from NASA. They gave him a room full of awesome things, and they didn't give him just one thing to change into. Just not one. And then, again, that's fine. Keep him in that shirt. But why market it with him in in this other shirt? Is it because the other one looked too 1986? Is that why?
I don't
These are
know.
the things that
Maybe
keep
Maybe
me up at night,
distracted.
Ron. These are the things that keep
maybe
me
they
up at
didn't want
night.
him in a red shirt because everyone on a red shirt in a ship gets shot by like a rock monster.
No. Yeah, okay. Star Trek, I get it. Anyway, we're not talking about Star Trek though. I do think though they should have kept it for I get that they could have kept it for continuity's sake to bring it all back at the end, but still, then why
The
market it
box,
with the
yeah.
red shirt? It's a little too bizarre for me.
Actually, does he
Um,
have any different shirts on in the scenes, like between, like when they're talking on the riverfront or anything like that? I don't
oh,
remember.
Doesn't he have a jacket on at some point?
I think he puts the shirt on. The shirt that he's wearing is the one he wears when he goes out to get his brother, and then we never see him in anything else after that. He may have something different at the frisbee throwing. That may be a thing, but we
But
never
we
see him in
literally see
anything
him
else.
change in the
No, he takes
in
NASA.
he doesn't have a shirt on, and he puts it on. So that's what was happening there. No, in the even in the dog frisbee competition at the very beginning, he's still wearing that shirt. So
All
I don't
right.
know. I just hope
maybe
wherever
he just
Joey.
didn't get
They
clothes.
they've got a boat and a waterfront house in Fort Lauderdale, so they have no money left over to pay for more shirts than just the
Yeah,
one.
I just hope that wherever Joey Kramer is
Yeah.
right now, he's wearing that shirt. That's all I have to say.
He
So
probably is.
let's get back to Joey Kramer for a second. Not just like the that how he robbed a bank 30 years ago, but also like I guess that's the reason. I was going to say, why didn't we ever see anything from him? Because I feel like he's a pretty good actor. Like for a kid actor to kind of own this movie, I feel like he does a pretty good job in this one. I have seen kid actors and maybe poorly directed in say space movies, but I've seen kid actors that don't really do so well. And so, I'm like, okay, this guy's doing pretty well, but then you never really see him in anything else. But it could be because he needed a little bit of cash and tried to rob a bank.
Yeah, he
I
definitely did
gotta
a
look
good
up this
job
robbing a bank
as
story.
being put out of place. Somebody put it in the chat. That was somewhere in Canada. So does it really count?
How do you do that? You walk
Anyway,
into the bank and
but
say, "I'd like some money, and you no guns or anything. It's just a super nice robbery."
give me all the loonies, please.
Well, anyway,
Hi, Canada. I love you. Uh, no, he was
uh,
very good at, like, you could feel him being put upon. Like, he is exasperated the whole film, and you feel it from him.
yeah,
Especially when he doesn't have any other humans to bounce off of. He's just talking to a machine. And
yeah.
I'm assuming Paul Rubens wasn't actually there giving the lines.
Usually there's going to be
Probably.
somebody doing a temp track off just so you get the
Yeah.
spacing.
Or they could have just it could have said something off to the side. I want to interrupt again and say Filter has given us another super chat for $5. Thank you so much. In the original
Yay!
poster,
Thank
he has the
you.
striped shirt. The red shirt is a much later change for current box covers. Yes, yeah, I agree with you. Here is the poster that you're talking about here. The original Flight of the Navigator poster for this, and you see all the little animals from the menagerie on him. So that does make sense. But I feel like what they've done here is unnecessary to change it because we know it's an old movie, but I get what you're saying. So thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. And thanks for
Thank
pointing that out.
you.
I still need Disney to tell me why they changed it to red. So if they want to email me, they can. It's robw at
I
wdwnt.com.
So I sometimes do corporate headshots, and I always tell people to wear solid colors and not patterns because solid colors are not distracting, and
Right.
they're less likely to look aged and dated later on. So that's just my guess for why it's a solid red shirt. Trying to put your
And it's
mind at ease,
always
Rob.
Thank you. Thank
and
you. I
it's always on a
appreciate it.
blue background. So
Yeah, no, it does look pretty good there like that. Um, okay, so when when this movie ends, and again, I'm not like really kind of talking through the plot of it because I think either you've seen it before and you know the plot of it, but I'm not, we're not going to go shot for shot about it. But when it ends, I felt like it ended very well, because one of the things that it had me guessing, and again, first time seeing it, was, is this going to be a dream? Is this going to be an anti-M and you were there and you were there and all of that kind of stuff, and the whole thing was a dream? And then there's the little guy from the spaceship with him in his bag, and it's like, oh, it was real. And like Jeff
I
seems to
liked
be okay with
that.
it. Yeah.
I liked that, but the thing with all of this multiverse stuff that's been coming out lately, now I'm like, oh my God, there's another universe where his parents got to see him for a couple of hours and then he disappears again. And then now they're back to having one son again and have no idea what happened to their other son. So that's kind of where my mind went, like for the parents who are left in the other universe, like, what the heck just happened?
Well, but I mean, Jeff seemed to be okay. I feel like he may get to be like a scientist or a doctor or something and make them enough money and all that. So they'll be fine if you're worried about them.
And had much better shirts.
I don't
Very
know.
80s shirts.
I was about to say, I mean, I'm not really, I wasn't super comfortable with his shirts either. Um,
I think it was a Zach Morris wardrobe.
yeah. It is interesting to
They,
me though. Again, this is a 90-minute movie. The first act is really us trying to, figure out like what happened to him. Like we don't know at this point. And there's these weird things where he's communicating through the headgear, into like he's speaking binary and all these weird things. And so in this, like I feel like in the second act it's kind of that ET chase, and then the third act is really them flying all over the place. There's a lot of them flying everywhere, and him kind of like
Yeah.
connecting with Max. So it becomes the David and Max show for the most part of that, the last part of that thing. Ron, you were a big fan of this movie. When you were a kid, I mean, were you just riveted by all this? And if so, was it because you were like, I wish this was me, or what was so
I've
awesome?
just always been a sci-fi, like anything. Like once I saw Star Wars, I was hooked on anything for it. And like kid, and you know, this last Starfighter. I mean, he's a little older in that. Space Camp, The Explorers. Anytime you get kids in sci-fi, like really attracted me to it. So that's probably what it was.
Yeah. Would it be possible though that as a kid you wanted everything in this menagerie? And did they market
Um,
every little thing in this menagerie? Because wow.
that modern Disney would, and modern Disney would have had been all the toys on the bed would have been Disney brands, even if the other brands were paying them to put them on there. But did you catch a very interesting reference in that menagerie scene to one of the planet names?
what was it?
I think it was
What
the
planet name?
Pixar cluster.
Yes, I did hear Pixar. Yeah, but that was
Oh, no, I
1986,
didn't.
so yeah, I did hear
They
Pixar.
were just forming, weren't they?
In 86 maybe? I mean, they also like were really into showing off computers in this and pixels, Pixar, but maybe that could have been a thing. But I did hear that too. I did hear exactly them say that. Um,
I missed it.
but now I'm obsessed with what you were just talking about with the toys, and I was immediately like I wanted to stop on this frame and go, what were these toys, and did I have them or did I want them? First of all, that's
I
a
stopped on the frame because I figured that was going to be some of your trivia questions. Was what the toys on the bed were going to be.
no.
I
Constellation Finder is interesting. GI Joe, Space Turbo, the Porsche, the remote control. But that baseball glove, that is NASA has more money than that. That is a budget baseball glove. They really should have come up with something better. Is that a speak and spell on the back though? That red thing, like
That's what I was
it's
just thinking.
sort of looks like
Oh.
one. And then
where?
Felix the cat is on
No, I
the
think that's a
other.
tape deck.
Ah, and then the Felix the cat thing, and then they're leaning way too much into the space shuttles for NASA for my tastes. Like it's a little too on the nose. There's a space shuttle toy and a space shuttle book or puzzle, and then there's another space shuttle on the other side. So again, that's pretty cool that they lay all that out on the bed for him. But do better with the baseball mitt and
But
glove.
no
I mean the
clothes.
baseball glove.
No
Yeah.
clothes.
Well, I mean,
Just toys.
You know
they
what?
had a
You
good
know what?
GI
Now that you
Joe,
say
and I
that,
can't tell who the.
yeah. Now which Transformer it is? Is that what you're gonna say? Now
Yeah,
that you
I
say
was
that,
trying
I
to figure out
have.
what Transformer was and what the GI Joe vehicle was. I think it was one of the jets I had, but I can't quite
I
see.
I actually have found a flaw in my own theory. He's wearing a button-down shirt here.
Oh, so he
Oh, there we
brought
go.
his one other shirt with him.
Yeah. So again, it must be for continuity that he puts back on his original shirt, but they packed it with him.
I
He
mean,
might not
it's
have that
probably
many clothes. They literally probably gave away all his clothes by 1979, and
Yeah.
they probably bought a few things for him. But
Yeah. Um. The yeah. Anyway, so some of the scenes are a little bit weird. The scene with where how they find the stuff in his head. I feel like that with a 90-minute movie, you could have stretched this part of it out because it's very vague. The whole like we're seeing things in his head. How is that getting there? Is that me? That's not me. And he freaks out and he goes away. And they're instantly like, oh, that's binary. That's this. You don't think so? I feel like that was rushed.
I think they assumed nobody knows how computers work, then, so they could just get away with all of that too. Um,
And this guy looks like Jeff Goldblum's dad or older brother or something like that. So that I thought was a little bit funny.
I, he's probably generic scientist 13 in like five different movies, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And Monorail 425, I think it is, says his parents saved his clothes is interesting but not unreasonable. When they show the scene where they're talking to him on the phone, they show that they've gotten all his stuff
They're
out of
unpacking his room.
storage and they're unpacking. They're putting his room back together. So they still had his stuff.
and
So that
again, those poor parents in that universe when he decides to leave them, they just
you're
went in
starting
and
to
got all of his stuff out of
I don't
storage
think
and then
they
had to
exist
go put it
anymore,
back
that
in.
Desi.
that doesn't exist anymore, Desi, because this is not the multiverse because you're already confusing people in the chat. So stop it. Somebody was like, I thought he went home at the end, and they're like, he did, and so it's like, so that's the thing with the kid that all gets erased. It's Back to the Future rules, not Marvel Cinematic Universe rules.
Well, then who was the Marty who went back in time from the Lone Pine Mall?
I don't want to talk about it. Well, he had to. He had to complete the. Okay. Anyway,
No,
they
but
put him
that
right
Marty
back where
left
he
the
would.
Twin Pine Mall.
They put him back where he needed to be in this movie, and then that's the important part. But like I said, I was going to be very mad if I found out that it could have been a dream, and like we have no proof of any of this that happened, like that it was all in his head because he fell and hit his head. I mean, that's very likely that could have been a thing that happened. So, I'm glad that they turned that around and made that happen. I do want to say thank you guys for watching. I see a bunch of people in chat. If you haven't already, please give us a thumbs up so it will help more people find the show. And now is the part that is Desi's favorite. She won't know much about this, but I hope Ron will. We're going to ask a couple trivia questions. Ron, this is like your favoriteest movie of all time ever. Don't lie, it is. And so you should know all of the things that
Pushing
I'm
it, but
about to ask
okay.
you. Yeah. Um, they should be easy. They should be easy for you. David has a model in his room, and it's a Corvette model. What year is that Corvette? It says on the box. I'm not just
Uh,
like a car freak. It says on the box.
no idea, but I'd guess 65.
Oh,
'78.
it's 59. 78? What? No, no. It's
A
59.
Stingray? Isn't that a Stingray?
It's a 59 Corvette model. So this is for Desi because I know that Ron will know the answer to this one. But little Jeff, his little brother, is wearing a T-shirt that says what on it? Because we only see little Jeff wearing one T-shirt.
I I have no idea, no clue. If you had asked me right now, did his shirt even say anything? I probably would have said no. It was just a blank blue T-shirt.
Just
I have
another
no idea.
crazy striped T-shirt, right? Yeah. Yeah. No. Ron, do you know? I feel like you should know.
I think it was was it a Star Wars shirt?
Ron, come on, man. I'm see. I feel like you. I thought you would have known that. Oh well.
What is it?
Anyway, the next question.
Well, yeah, you didn't.
I know.
You
I
didn't
know. I didn't say it.
answer.
I know. It was a Miami T-shirt.
Oh,
So that's why I thought you would know because of all the Florida references. Because the whole because you were
Well,
there.
something that I thought was strange was that they made it sound like they were going south from Miami to get to Fort Lauderdale. Isn't Miami south of Fort Lauderdale?
it's about 30 miles. Yeah, like
Because weren't they coming
uh,
like from Destin or somewhere in North Florida and they were going down and then they
well,
passed
the way
through
they were
Miami to get to
coming
Fort Lauderdale?
to like Big Al's, I always thought they were coming down Alligator Alley, which would be 75, which kind of goes into. But it looks like they were coming up from the Keys when they were on when you see the road sign.
Okay.
Is it? It's Big Al's. Is that a real? Was that a real place? This is the best I can get of the shot of his T-shirt saying Miami on it. But he's wearing the same one through all of it. I think I could probably find something at the end too. But anyway, is Big Al's a real place?
No, it just was Al's Roadside or whatever. But it's Al's Gatorland or something. It said like right,
Hmm.
Al's Gator World.
Yes. Speaking of Al, Al is drinking a soda in this scene. And they mention the fact that there are multiple types of Coke at this same time. Is he drinking a Coke Classic or is he drinking New Coke?
Classic.
Ron?
I would have said new.
No, it's Classic. I figured the multiple choice would help. When the family is going back from the dog frisbee throwing competition, the big jamboree for throwing frisbees that happens every year. The kids, they stop and drop Jeff off with some other kids that are doing what? What are they doing?
Slip
Getting
inside.
on a boat?
That's right. It is slip and slide. I was so stoked about that. Like, they got the slip and slide in the woods. That has to be the worst. There are rocks there. There've got to be rocks. That was the worst part of a slip and slide, where like you lay it down in
Where
the
are
yard
there
and you hit a rock.
woods in Fort Lauderdale? Are there woods in
There's
Fort Lauderdale?
okay. I don't want to get into. I don't want to complain about that, but like
And a
that area
hill
where they
that
said
he
like
could
he's a
fall
half
down?
mile off. There are no woods, no ravines, no train tracks anywhere near that's the Las Olas area. Like my house doesn't exist anymore. I don't know if that house because people bought them, like bought two lots, leveled them, and put up like 10,000 square foot mansions. So the house I grew up in has been gone since like 88 or 98. Somebody who bought it, leveled it, built a big mansion. Somebody bought that, leveled it, built a bigger mansion there. Um, but that area is all at the time would have been some of the older neighborhoods of Fort Lauderdale, which not that old. Like the houses were what 40s, maybe 40s to 60s built.
Yeah.
But that area, like right across that canal, that's the Intercoastal. You're right across the canal from the Swimming Hall of Fame, $100 million yachts. There's no woods except for like a state park anywhere near there. So
Yeah.
yeah, nothing like that. Train tracks closest would be probably about 2 or 3 miles off, and they would be near a downtown area.
And we have no hills anywhere in Florida that he could fall down like that.
Not within walking distance of that area. No, and that ravine, that's ridiculous for Florida. It would have been no river.
Well, again, the slip and slide is the correct answer. Also, how much of and this is going to be important, so I have to cue this up. This is a visual thing. This is nothing to do with a trivia question. I just need to ask if you have any thoughts on it. How much of their $9 million budget did they spend on this scene depicting Tokyo? This was absolutely the worst
$3.
green screen work I've seen in my entire. It was like Oh man, really? They're like, okay, well, we have to show that David didn't just like tool around America. We have to show that he actually went somewhere else. So we went, we got to show. Oh, we could say he went to Japan, and it's like they have six Japanese people standing in front of a green screen pointing up. I don't know. It just seemed unnecessary, but I guess that's it's
And then they all have
1986.
cameras.
Yeah, so I don't know. He's like, oh, we're in
Yeah, that
Japan.
that I felt slightly. The cameras felt slightly racist coming back now. Um, when because he was like, yes, the Japanese people have cameras was the joke because they were all tourists, but they're walking around their own city. Then they all pull out the giant cameras. That felt bad.
Mm-hmm.
As did the fat jokes were something you would never see today either.
Turtle
Right.
says the scene was funny, and Monorail 425 says it looks better than some CGI. You're not wrong. You're not wrong in that. But Desi, it reminds me of that scene when we were talking about the Lizzie McGuire movie where they show her from the back and she's at the Coliseum and they faked everything. Like the sky is fake and everything. It's just bad. And I'm just like, why? Why did you do that? And
Yeah.
it was only for a blip, and it was enough just to annoy me, and then it was done. This one just that didn't seem necessary. Like the one with the Golden Gate Bridge, that was all right with the thing flying by the Golden Gate Bridge, but I just thought that was weird. The one last question that I have, and Ron, I don't know if you'll know the answer or you'll know it in a parsec, but I don't know what I'm just throwing stuff around.
Parsec is distance, not time.
Yes, exactly. How many light years to Phelan?
546
Whoa.
Wouldn't it be impressive if that
point
was right?
something.
No.
It's right. It's
It's
close,
it's
Oh,
right?
I
it's
Isn't it
really
it's
like
it,
believed you.
it's 2.2 solar years, but it was 560 light years.
oh, I wasn't that far off. I was
No,
off
no,
one
that's what
digit.
I'm saying.
Okay.
No, that was pretty impressive. That
I
546,
was
it was
impressed.
560. That was very close.
I knew it was 4 hours to David.
Yeah. Desi, what day was it when David disappeared?
4th of July, 1978.
Bang, you got it. That's it. That's all I'm doing.
That was
I
awesome.
appreciate you guys playing along. Ron, just that was really super close. Like I'm proud. That was awesome. Thank you guys for doing that. We like trivia, right? Trivia is fun, right? Although Desi like
Yeah.
drags me for it every single time. She's like, "Oh God." I think I may have said this on another show. Is like we were gonna have Desi on the Muppet one, and I said, "Don't worry, because for it's Muppets Mayhem. You had to watch 10 episodes. I'm not gonna make you do trivia." She said, "I don't believe you." And I was like, okay, fine, but I'm telling you, there will not be any trivia because we're all seeing it for the first time, so it's fine. A lot of these that are classics, though, especially if they're your favorites, I would love to hear if you guys know them like the back of your hand, and that's awesome.
Like
I
ever
think
after.
the one that I know is the Last Crusade that Ron and I did recently. It was like we just kept talking about like all of these quotes from that one. That one's one that
How iconic, yeah.
yeah, that I know so well. So, um, so overall, I want to say that this movie is again kind of a cult classic. It was not a huge box office win. It was 9 million to make. It made 18 million at the box office, which I guess
Oh,
in
doubled
Disney
its money.
terms, in Disney terms, doubled its money.
But this
Go ahead.
has Disney ever made a sci-fi movie under its own banner that did well?
Before they bought 20th Century Fox and before they bought Marvel and Star Wars, they never really had anything in the top 10. Because if you think about it, most of the movies they made were for children, which would get, matinee prices from parents or children's prices for admission, and only be in the theaters for a certain amount of time before they then went to video. So they didn't ever have any huge hits in the top 10 of the like biggest money makers of all time until they bought those movies. And now it's like littered with it, from Avatar to Star Wars to Marvel movies that are up there. So yeah, and
Well, I mean,
even
all
the
their
picks.
movies made money, but all their sci-fi movies, as we talked about, like Black Hole, Tron, and none of them like ever
Yeah.
did what they up through John Carter. Like nothing Disney label sci-fi has ever made big. Maybe Tron Legacy made a lot of money overseas, I think, but that might be it.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with that. So when the movie wraps up, immediately my mind goes to this could have a sequel. This could have a sequel to they're going to appear on on Phelan. They need to go there. You know, I don't know. It felt like it could have a sequel, and maybe at the time we just that's not where our heads were at. That we needed to make a sequel of every single solitary movie we ever made. But Desi, did you
It
get
would
that
have
feeling at the
today.
end?
No, I didn't. I didn't think that necessarily at the end because if there was going to be a sequel, I don't know. It felt like when he said goodbye to his parents in the future, like that felt like it kind of closed the door for a sequel. I thought if anything, they would end it there where he goes to see his parents, and then they do a sequel later where maybe oh, he goes back in time. Um, so I didn't get that impression. But if it was made today, it would absolutely have a sequel. And I'm not putting it past Disney to do a remake. But they need
Speaking
to
of
stop.
which, in 2021, 2022, June of 2022, they shared that Bryce Dallas Howard would be doing a reboot to Flight of the
No.
Navigator. That she would be directing a reboot, and obviously Bryce Dallas Howard, the daughter of Ron Howard,
I love her.
directed several episodes of Mandalorian. So I mean, she would be a good one to put something like this together. But
But
this
please
was
don't.
as recently as I think the first announcement came in 2021, like maybe January 2021. This was from June of 2022. That it says she's still set to direct, but is yet to see a script. So a year ago, they were still talking about that. Now, obviously, with the writer's strike and the SAG-AFTRA strike right now, nobody's thinking about deep projects, I'm sure.
Right.
But Ron, as much as you love this movie, would you want to see a reboot?
I think it is one. There's movies I think are classics and don't touch. I don't think this is that. I think this could use a little more of the modern sophistication we see out of sci-fi and even kids movies more, and I think you could do something with it. I don't want a direct translation, just kind of use the same exact story. I think the core of the story is something you could translate into something new, and I think it could work. And I think Dallas Howard has a good grip on sci-fi with a little bit of humor towards it. So I think she would be pretty good for it.
Okay. I just, again, I mean, I saw Geek Filter in chat said, please no. And I think that about some movies sometimes, and I've said that on multiple occasions that one of my favorite movies is The Nightmare Before Christmas, and I don't want to see the one where he goes to Thanksgiving Town. I don't want to see
No.
him going to Easter Town. I don't want to see any of that. I like that where it is doing what it does. I don't need to see like them go back to like a prequel with him before he was dead or anything like that. Like leave that alone right where it is and don't mess with it. Bring it back. It's a classic. People love seeing that. So again, I always think that for other people in their fandoms, when those kind of things come up, it's like, do you want to see that again, or do you not want to see that again? So
Yeah, I don't think this is anybody's classic at that level. Like, I think a lot of people appreciate it. I don't think it's anybody's favorite childhood movie. I think it's
Except my
something
husband.
people remember fondly.
well, and that's a question we're going to have to answer here real quick. Is this does this stand at the test of time? Is it the nostalgia that gets you through it? Is it okay to see through a 2023 lens and those type of things? So I'm going to ask you guys for your final thoughts on that. But I was curious after you talked about the Disney thing, Ron, and I went back and looked up the all-time worldwide box office movies for Walt Disney. Now I know you didn't say, you said did they make money, not were they like all-time box office. But this is what I was talking about here. If this is the all-time, this is the Walt Disney Company celebrating 100 years of wonder this year. And the movies that are in the top here, you don't get to an original until movie 6, which was Frozen 2. and
The
then
Lion
Frozen
King?
down here, and then Beauty and the Beast.
Or
Oh, the
oh,
Lion
that
King.
was the
That was the
live
reboot, the
action.
remake,
Yeah.
the live action. It still counts. You're right. That does make sense. But like most of the movies that are in here are Pixar or Star Wars or Marvel. You don't see a lot of those that are we consider the classics in here.
But are these adjusted grosses? Like, because adjusted grosses, Snow White is one of the top movies of all time.
Oh,
Like,
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, we'll have to dig deep into that one. That's what we do, right? We dig deep. So now that we've talked about this, and again, thank you guys for the super chats tonight. We appreciate you. Thank you guys for being on the panel here. Desi, thanks for finally watching this movie with me. I can't believe it took this long to get you in here to watch this movie.
And
And
you.
Ron, thanks for sharing your videos as well. But I just before we go, we need to ask the question, and I'm going to start with you, Ron. And we're going to actually let's start with Desi because I'm more excited to see what Ron has to say. Desi, this was your first time. Would you recommend this movie?
Yeah, I think so. I thought it was really cute. I have no nostalgia for it because I had never seen it as a child. But my husband said, you know what? Watching it now is still just as good. Sometimes you watch things later and you're like, ah, okay, that was really only good when I was a kid. It's not so good on a rewatch. Like with Xenon. When I saw Xenon again, I was like, oh, yeah, that wasn't as good as I remember. But this one really was good. And my two boys watched it with us and they loved it. So it's good for the whole family. You don't have to have grown up in that era to appreciate it. But I thought it was really cute and it stands the test of time, except for, a couple maybe cringy moments that aren't 2023 approved. But, you just got to look at things through a 1980s lens for that stuff.
Yeah, good point, Ron.
yeah, I don't think it's just nostalgia driving, and I think it is well paced. I think it's a tight enough story. I think it's a good kids movie still. I don't think it's ever been an Oscar winner, but I think it's a good kids movie that holds up. And I was debating if I was going to have my daughter watch it with me or not, but it just I ended up having to watch it while I was doing some repetitive work. So I would show it to her, but I don't think a 4 year old's going to like it. I think a little older she can get to it.
Okay. Yeah, and like I said, this was the first time that I saw this movie. We sat down to watch it, and my wife said, "I haven't seen it either." And my daughter was like, "I have," because again, we this was one we picked up for cheap at one point and showed the kids, and they loved it. It wasn't one that I grew up with, so it wasn't a big deal to me. My flight of the Navigator was Tron. And we've talked about that before. So I watched it for the first time and I liked it. I enjoyed it. I see what people got out of it. There were some times where it was a little slow and I was like, I don't know what would have grabbed a kid to watch it over and over again. But then I think the relationship between David and Max and was enough that I get it. So I agree with you. I think it was a good movie. It's a solid 90-minute film. So, I mean, if you haven't watched it before or you need to go back and rewatch it again, just sit down with it. It's an easy watch, and, I think you'll have fun doing it. So, before we let everybody go, I want to say thank you to our WIGS members. We love our WIGS, the WDWNT Interglobe Society. Thank you guys so much for being members of our family. If you want to learn more about that, go to patreon.com/WDWNT to find out more. Again, we have lots of great programming on WDWNT TV. Hopefully you guys subscribe. That includes News Tonight that comes on tomorrow night. And then we also have
Not this week.
No News Tonight.
No news tonight this week. We'll be back
Okay.
next week.
Okay. Yeah, I there you go. So, but Sunday night we will have Park Center again. Last week we had, actually, Desi, you were on the last 2 weeks, weren't you?
I was, yep.
And we've had some interesting
We had
topics. So if you haven't already, go back and watch them. We did one about quotes from attractions, which was a lot of fun. Last week we talked about the Food and Wine Festival, and we had Alessa on to give us a big kind of a firsthand feel of how the festival is going. So watch Park Centers from the past couple weeks, but then join us Monday or Sunday night at 9 p.m. live as we shoot through the latest in the Disney Parks news. And then, of course, join us back here next Wednesday when we're going to have yet another episode of Deep in the Plus, which I'm drawing a blank as to what that one is. Does anybody else remember?
No, and I just looked at the schedule.
It is um, uh, Kazazimoto Generation Fire, which was a series of shorts from African animators
Oh,
that and Kamila is
interesting.
going to
Oh,
come on and talk about that with me. She picked that one out. We have been wanting to get Kamila from Park Center on to Deep in the Plus for a while. She picked that one out, and so we will be talking about those next week. I'm pretty excited about that. The week after that is Into the Woods. So, I mean, we're finally going to be doing the musical Into the Woods. And then the week after that, my friend Maleko, who lives in Hawaii, I said to him, "What movie do you want to do, my friend? Come on and talk about it." And he was like, "Have you done Turner and Hooch?" And I was like, "We have
I
not."
love that
So
movie.
we're gonna do Turner and Hooch. So again, the Kazazimoto Generation Fire shorts, followed by Into the Woods, and then Turner and Hooch. And then on August 30th, Patrick Hackett's gonna come back and talk more about the next round of the classic Disney shorts released for the Disney 100 Years of Wonder. So please come back and join us every week. We appreciate you. Have a great week, and we will see you guys next time.